I'd like to call the regular Camarillo Sanitary District meeting to order, please, for November 15th. Ms. Madeline, would you please call roll?
Director McDonald?
Here.
Director Morgan?
Here.
Director Tremblay?
Here.
Secretary Craven?
Here.
Chair Kildee?
Here. All right, flag salute. Ms. McDonald,
Oh,
would you like to do it tonight?
Please rise and join us in the flag salute. With your right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, amendments to this agenda?
No amendments, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Public comments for the Camarillo San District. Anybody here tonight to make a comment? With that, we'll move down to item 3, which is a consent calendar.
Move the approval.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing
I have a.
Yes, Mr. Tremblay.
I'm sorry.
Morgan?
Tremblay.
I just had a question on item E on
Sure.
the consent calendar. Is it okay to go ahead and ask that? at this point?
Absolutely.
This is the purchase order for the rental of the belt filter press. And just curious in reading the staff report, since this is a recurrent expense, I'm just
Tony,
wondering.
is your mic on? I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
How about that?
Thank you. That's great.
I'll use my best indoor voice, sorry. This seems to be a recurrent expense, and so the question I had, Mr. Consul, is do you know how much it would cost to actually purchase the belt press?
So staff has been looking into that, and as indicated in the staff report, in the future we're going to be looking at alternatives. So estimated cost is about $500,000 to own. That's the capital cost. Of course, then there would be ongoing maintenance also with owning a filter of our own filter press. So that is one of the options that we're looking at, along with we're moving forward with looking into our biosolids processing and handling that may have an impact on which is the best option to go with, buy a new and own a filter press or continue with the rental approach, depending on how much of the solids we really need to handle and do additional drying.
So just as a comment then, so it sounds like from a getting the best bang for the buck standpoint, it still makes more sense at this point to go ahead with the rental.
Yeah, definitely at this point this year, definitely for sure, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Please vote. That passes unanimously. Any comments from the staff at this point? No comments? Is there any comments from any board members at this point? No. So seeing none, we will adjourn to December 6th at 7:30.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Camarillo City Council to order and let the record reflect that all council members are present. The next item on the agenda would be amendments to the agenda. The one thing I've been told that we need to pull item G of the consent calendar to be handled at a future meeting.
I would
So,
like to pull item I. I guess it would go to administrative services.
it was on my list too. Anyone else?
I had I, but I let it go. I'll listen to it.
Okay.
When we get there, I have a comment on E.
Okay. Okay, those are our amendments with, another amendment? Okay.
Call the question on N.
Yeah. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a presentation, and we've got a bunch of people out here in red shirts. And they are representing the Camarillo Wings Association. So if do you all want to come up, or do you have just a couple of you? That's the backup. And since you're giving the presentation, I'll let you talk first.
I'm Jim Thompson. I'm president of the Camarillo Wings Association, and this is our 37th year of having the Camarillo Air Show. Now, I don't know how many of you have been to it, but if you haven't, you should.
And that goes for everyone out there on TV.
It goes for everyone out there. We've been very proud to be able to put this on for not only for honoring veterans and for educational purposes with our STEM program. And we are especially thankful to the City of Camarillo for their help and for their outstanding dedication and support to it. And since it is the Camarillo Air Show, we'd like to have a little more involvement. So we'd be looking for that. And I think the benefit to Camarillo, certainly in the advertising and whatnot we do, is recognized around the area. So with that, I would like to give this plaque to you, presented to the City of Camarillo in appreciation for your outstanding dedication and support for the 2017 Camarillo Air Show, the Camarillo Wings Association.
You know, so that everyone hears, is that microphone on?
Does this on?
You had to put it close.
Better?
Now they can hear it.
Should I repeat that?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Audience won't.
A little bit.
With we are proud to present this plaque to the City of Camarillo
Close to the mouth.
in appreciation for your outstanding dedication and support for the 2017 Camarillo Air Show, Camarillo Wings Association.
Oh, that's nice.
Jim, repeat the request on participation.
Oh, I have to give it back?
Oh, the request for the participation was that we would like to see even a greater participation with the City of Camarillo in the years to come. Thank you.
You still got a paparazzi here.
It's not us. I'm worried about the people in the audience hearing it. Up there.
Thank you. On behalf of the City Council and the City of Camarillo, we want to thank you. It really is a great event in our community, and people come from far to visit this air show. So you truly do put us on the map and in the sky, and we do appreciate it very, very much. And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-oh, they're all leaving.
We have another meeting.
Oh, okay. Oh, perfect, perfect. Well, thank you all for coming. Okay, we move on to the consent calendar next. So let's take the list of items here that we just want to talk about. And I'm going to start with item L. And item L is the Camarillo Springs debris barriers site improvements. And before we get a staff report, we have one speaker sheet on that, and that would be Barbara Williams.
Yeah, Barbara Williams, Camarillo Springs. As a resident of the Springs in Camarillo Springs and a former HOA president, I'm very appreciative of the city's willingness to maintain Conejo Mountain debris improvements. Our community has been through a lot, and some residents are still working to fix their damages. What you are doing means a lot. Thank you. I want you to know that I am ashamed at the behavior of one of the owners of a property who has been a hindrance to the city's efforts to remove K-rails and help improve Conejo Mountain. He does not represent the feelings of the majority of the residents, if not all of the rest. Please be assured that we appreciate all that the city is doing. Again, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Barbara.
you, Barbara. Now, do we have any other questions on this?
On that item?
On that particular item? Okay. Thank you again for coming, Barbara. So that takes care of that. We had a question on E.
Actually, I don't have a question on E. I have a comment on E. I had, this is the cannabis ordinance for facilities, cultivation, delivery. And I had just started wondering at the last council meeting how our voters voted on this item. And so I asked the city clerk to get me the results, and it turns out that in the city of Camarillo, for those precincts, not counting the ones adjacent or outside, I didn't bother counting them, there were 773 more people who voted for Prop 64 than against it. Which kind of surprised me. Isn't going to change how I'm voting, but I just thought bring that to everybody's attention.
That it is one of the things that's different between just simply voting on to legalize the use is all the implementation and what it all brings, and that's the piece they don't see that we have to deal with.
They're voting yes or no.
Yeah.
Would I be able to comment on your comment? Regarding the number of voters for Proposition 64, the action that the city has taken with regard to this ordinance that's on your agenda tonight is completely consistent with the provisions of Prop 64. So I just want to make sure that the public understands that. Prop 64 does have a lot of limitations with respect to the uses of marijuana. For example, it cannot be smoked in a public place and near daycare centers and the like. But it does give local government the authority to make decisions on whether or not you want marijuana businesses, outdoor cultivation, deliveries, and the like. And some cities have taken advantage of those opportunities, and that's what your ordinance does, is consistent with Proposition 64, make those determinations and provisions. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Thank you very much. Anything else on that one? Okay, item N is the next one. That's a personal service agreement user fee study. I think that was Mr. Tremblay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The professional services agreement on the user fee model. And in reading the staff report and in comparing it to Exhibit A, I just had a couple of questions on how this was going to unfold. And I guess is my understanding correct that there will be an initial meeting by the consultant with the City Council prior to, there'll be 2 study sessions, and there'll be a preliminary study session with the City Council before the consultant starts the work on kicking off the study?
That's correct.
Okay, because it's been about, if I'm reading the staff report right, it's been, 5 years since the last user fee exercise?
The complete user fee update was in 2012 with, the study was done in 2012 with an update in 2013 and a slight update in 2015. So the bulk of the work was done in 2012. Yeah.
Okay, so the important thing in my mind is that we'll have that preliminary study session first.
Right.
Then the consultant will go to work, and then the preliminary results will come back to the City Council in another study session.
Correct.
Prior to going to any kind of an adoption.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Anything else on this one? Any other questions on the consent calendar? Okay, then I would entertain a motion on the consent calendar having pulled item G and item I.
Move the approval of the consent calendar with the exceptions of item G, which will come back to us at a later date, and item I, which is being moved to administrative services.
I don't is item I going to administrative services or to public works?
If I might, that would go to Public Works. It is a
Okay.
City Hall fund, coming from
Okay.
the fund, but
Public
it's a capital
Works.
project.
Public Works.
Administrative, John's off the hook.
Which is being pulled from the consent calendar and moved to another part of the agenda.
Okay, any other comments? If not, please vote. I did have a second. Yeah, I did.
You did.
I did. I remember. And that does pass unanimously. Okay, we move on now to the section under City Council. And that is an adoption of the investment policy 3.04 for fiscal year 2017-18. Staff report, please.
Yes, Mayor and members of the City Council. Pursuant to the city's investment policy, the City Council will review the investment policy on an annual basis. The purpose of the policy is to identify the general investment goals and objectives for the city's investment program, to include safety, liquidity, and yield. It also describes the parameters for investing the city's funds, serves as a communication tool for staff and elected officials, and enhances the quality of decision-making and demonstrates a commitment to the fiduciary care of the funds. As the policy does require an annual review and approval by the City Council, the Investment Committee met on several occasions to discuss the proposed revisions to the policy to include the addition of investment options and added language for improved clarification. The City Council did discuss these policy changes at 2 study sessions in September and in October. The following are the recommended changes summarized that are included in the policy. A section was added for prudence to define the manner and fiduciary duty for those who manage the city's portfolio. The authorized investments section was updated for language related to authorized investments and to incorporate the addition of 2 additional investment vehicles, municipal securities and negotiable certificates of deposit. Also, the prohibited and investments and activities included additional language to restrict certain investment types and transactions, such as trading on margin. Additional changes included expanded language on the collateralization requirements, safekeeping of securities and certificates of deposits. Clarification language was added to that section. A new section was included for risk management and diversification. And then the investment transactions included updated language regarding the competitive bidding process. Included additional language also for the section in investment services regarding requirements for broker-dealers, financial institutions, and registered investment advisors. With regard to reporting, the policy now includes language defining how the city values its investments in accordance with fair value hierarchy established by the generally accepted accounting principles. With regard to the annual review, added language to specify annual review of the policy by the Investment Committee and the City Council to be presented by September of each year. And then additionally, a glossary was added to the policy to help clarify terms with regard to the policy and, again, to clarify for the reader the various terms within the investment policy. So tonight you have before you a suggested action for a motion to adopt a resolution approving the investment policy 3.04.
Any questions?
Your Honor.
Questions?
We've done this. We've gone over this so much, but I was glancing through the glossary and saw coupon. Oop, I said, that doesn't say zero coupon. Okay, because that's what we had problems with, the zero coupon bonds way back. And so it was just one of those quick glances.
I have some things that I'd like to ask changes.
Okay.
Okay.
So tell us what page and where you are.
Big page, I always work from the red line copy, so I'm on the red line, big page 12.
Okay.
Under, I guess it's H? No, I?
It used to be I now, no, it used to be H, now it's I, the prohibited.
Prohibited investments. This isn't a finance thing, it's just a grammar thing. It's investments not specifically identified by this policy without the prior approval of the council should be R. Investments doesn't.
You're right.
My next thing is on big page 16, and my comment is exactly as the finance director said it in her I'm under Q, I guess it is, annual review, as she said in the report, but not as it here. I think it should say no later than September 30th of each fiscal year.
Okay.
And finally, I'll be on page 18, big page 18. The most important one here is down under money market. If you happen to check the red line version that we had in September, or maybe in October. In October, we received a red line of work done after the study session of 9/6. And on money market, It read, "The market in which short-term debt instruments, T-bills, discount notes," and then in red and lined out, it said commercial paper. But commercial paper is left in the definition here. We don't have commercial paper up front, so I believe this commercial paper should be removed.
Do we have banker's acceptance up front?
Yes. But
As
commercial
prohibited.
paper was removed in the,
So you're telling
Previously.
me that we're approving banker, I thought banker's acceptance weren't there either.
well, I hadn't crossed it out before. But we didn't include commercial paper up here.
I know that for a
Yeah.
fact. I don't think you have banker's acceptance either.
I don't remember that discussion.
I don't think it's in here.
Well, isn't that just a definition of commercial paper is all it's saying?
No, it's a prohibited,
The
it's,
terms?
but why would we define it if we're not going to use it any place in the policy?
No, I'm just saying that my understanding is just the definition of what commercial paper is.
But
I believe that's
we
what
had
it
all
says.
agreed on September
I agree.
6th to
I agree.
remove it,
I
and
understand. I'm just saying, I think it was.
and it was removed, but then it was reinserted. That's all I'm saying.
But in the definition.
And
not
I don't
in
know how it got
So I
reinserted.
guess if we're not going to use it, we don't really need it into the term of it then.
That would be correct.
Is that right?
And-
Yeah.
So those were the only things I had.
Okay, I've got to get back to this one. Anywhere in the policy itself do we say you can invest in money, in the money
Bankers.
market? I don't think we use that term, do we?
Actually,
I'm looking for, uh-huh.
actually, we do.
Oh, show me where.
I do, sorry.
Show me where. Or tell me where.
Big page 7, under authorized investments, under item 6, the term is government or U.S. Treasury money market funds rated AAA.
But those are already
So-
defined as U.S. government or Treasury money market funds.
Well, but those are considered to be, those are within the definition of money market within, on large page 18, item number 26.
But item 26 includes more than U.S. government or U.S. Treasury money market.
Could, I mean, what we could do, if you simply wanted to modify it, you could just put EG, make it for example, and that would be an easy correction or modification to make. So we don't get hung up on each of the individual items. But we do use that term, money market, in the investment policy, and I think it's appropriate, the definition is appropriate, or to have the definition in there is appropriate. That'd be my suggestion if you want to do that, is just simply take out the terms commercial paper and bankers' acceptances and leave it as e.g. T-bills and discount notes. That doesn't,
That doesn't work either. See, up in the front, you're referring only to government or U.S. Treasury money market funds. In the definition, it's more expanded. This is what happens when you start, instead of saying this is what you can do, now we're listing these broad categories, and that's what gets us in trouble when we start to try to figure out what they are.
well, T-bills, I mean, this is a classic U.S. Treasury money market fund. I don't understand. I mean,
Discount notes. Bankers' acceptance aren't necessarily government and U.S. Treasury money market funds.
Commercial paper and banker's acceptance could be removed from that and should have been removed from that, but
that's what I would do. Just confine it to those two, to the first two
Correct.
terms.
that's right.
But those are
Okay.
both commonly recognized U.S. Treasury investments.
Let's do it that way.
Yep.
That's the easy fix.
Okay. So when we define it then let me ask this question on all your definitions. If we're adjusting the definition of a money market to correspond to the money market funds we can invest in, would that be true of any of your other definitions that are expanded about beyond what is allowed?
Well, with regard to this section, in the conversations we had with Chandler Asset Management, our representative, because it is referenced as Councilmember Tremblay identified, it's appropriate to have that in the glossary of terms, as stated.
That's not my question. My question is, okay, we had an issue with defining money market here. Are any of the other definitions, forget that one, are there any other definitions that it would include it in the definition section that aren't allowed up in the policy itself?
I don't believe so.
Okay. I'm going to take your word on that one. I didn't check every word.
I think
Any
if
other
it was
questions?
true, Charlotte would have caught it too.
Well, you can read a
Yeah.
policy one way, and then you read it looking for something different, and you read it a different way, just how you're looking at it. Any other questions or comments?
I would move the approval of the investment policy as presented, with the exception of the grammatical changes that were discussed, and with the deletion on page 18, under item
26.
R
I think we got the ones you mentioned.
26.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're
The
not-
deletion of the words commercial paper and bankers' acceptances, and with then inserting the word "and" between T-bills and discount notes.
We have a motion and a second. I do want to make a comment. I will be voting no on it. I believe our policy has stood for many, many years, served us well. It was a policy that said this is what you can invest in, and you can't invest in anything else. And I feel uncomfortable with expanding it beyond that. So for that reason, I will be voting no.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a comment then, because the investment committee spent 4 separate meetings on this. The council had this in, I think, 2 study sessions. And on the staff report, I think it's fair to note that the recommended revisions to the policy include the addition of just 2 investment types, municipal securities and negotiable CDs, and enhanced language related to risk and the addition of a glossary of terms. Despite, and I quote, "Despite these recommended changes, the city's investment policy remains more conservative than otherwise allowed by state government code." And that is clearly true. These are what I would consider, and I was here during the time, not on the council, but I was a resident of the city in those terrible days back in the 80s where these issues came up. These investments are, by their very nature, extremely conservative. We are taking, I think the fair way to view this, Madam Mayor, is that we are taking very baby incremental steps. And the reason that we're doing it, by the way, is helpful because in the investment committee, for example, we're talking about investments, the size of this city's investment portfolio, approaching north of $180 million. If you add between, we were talking about this yesterday, you add on certain investments between 14 to 33 basis points on each $1 million worth of investments, that creates a large amount of additional revenue with very little risk. So I respectfully would disagree. I just want to make sure that I add that from
yes,
a context.
obviously. I have the right to say why I'm going to vote no.
I understand, and I just want to have context.
For the record, this policy has been reviewed every single year as required by policy. It has always been more conservative than law. That isn't anything new. So I have my personal opinion, you have yours. So I don't think it's fair to say that I'm trying to change any conservativeness or anything like that. We've always been conservative. And that's my personal opinion. I have the right to vote. So please vote. And that does pass with 4 yes, Mrs. McDonald voting no. Okay, we move on to let's take item I of the Public Works Department, which is, the consent calendar item I that we've moved to Public Works. And do you want questions or who?
I asked that.
Would you like to ask your question? Do you want to report? What would you like?
I wanted to know how it says that the project design is going to be adjusted. I wanted to know what we're talking about in adjusting it.
Sure. So, and by project design, we mean the entire package that went out to bid for construction. It's the plans, the layout, the bid specifications, and those items. So we are digging into that in more detail, so I don't have a whole lot of specifics right now on what those changes will be. They will not be changes to the amount of landscaping, We're set on the type of controller that's required for this improvement. So as far as what council has seen before, I think through a study session or two and then approval of the plans, we don't expect any changes materially what will be constructed out there. What we're talking about is, and this is largely driven by looking at wanting to rebid, both because the low bid was higher than our engineer's estimate, which is always wanting to have our projects come in at or close to the estimated, which is within our budget. But then also the spread of bids is also a cause for us to take a look at possibilities of why that was, and is there a way we can structure the bid documents to have hopefully less spread in the bids that we do receive, especially for this type of work, which is generally pretty straightforward. So that's items that we'll be looking into. One specific that we are looking at is including a requirement for landscaping license specifically. The bid requirements included a Class A general engineering contractor license. We feel that it may level things a little better if we also include the requirement to have a landscape license requirement also, especially, again, for the bulk of this work being exactly that. It makes sense for that.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Mr. Morgan?
Because I put that down too, because there was one bidder that was a low bidder, didn't match ours, but not too far off. That firm is a local firm, of course, and did you look and see what kind of that firm had?
Yes, we review all bids to determine whether it's a responsive bidder, including experience and just review their entire bid package, and there was all the bidders were found to be responsive.
Okay, if for instance when we go out for another bid, if we can't find anyone that's any lower than that, would we go back to this person because low bid from the one before?
No. Once you reject all bids, that's it essentially clears the slate, and we start over again with the bidding process. And I will add, it's not a guarantee that the bids are going to come in a whole lot lower. I mean, there are other factors that play into the bidding climate, as you're well aware, of workload and the general cost of materials and economy at the time. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? I guess I still don't quite understand. We have seen this with many bids where we have a big spread, and often at times we're told it has to do with the number of jobs out there, how busy people are, and so forth. So to me, that wasn't so much of a surprise. So I don't quite understand why this one's any different than the other ones. So you got to help me a little more.
Again, I think largely it is based on the type of work. For the entire stretch of the project, it's all very straightforward of landscaping, irrigation, and not very much specialty work. There are a couple specialty bid items that, as the bids were presented, there was some skewed differences between that. So. Again, in our total review, and again, we never do this lightly to take this step, but we do feel that there's a benefit to taking a look at restructuring the bid documents to obtain as favorable and representative bids as possible.
So basically, some of the criteria or some of the issues that were laid out could have been taken in different ways, and so that produces different bids. Is that so? You'll come out with something that's a little more clarifies it a little clearer, so
Correct.
Everyone is bidding the same project. I
Correct.
guess.
That's the goal.
Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha now. Mr. Tremblay?
Madam Mayor, Mr. Consul, there weren't any RFIs that came in during the course of the bid process, were there?
Not that were material to the bid.
Okay.
We received different, more immaterial questions, technicalities, and that kind of thing.
Okay. So separate and apart from project efficiencies and design, then it's also a question, isn't it, really, to respond to Madam Mayor's question, it's really a question of restructuring, in some ways restructuring the bid items, the line items, so there's no opportunity for varied interpretations between the bidders.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I wouldn't go so far as say none at all. Bidders are,
well, you try.
Are quite creative, I should put it that way, on how they do structure their bids. But that's the goal, is to minimize that.
Okay, thanks.
Move the approval of this item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that does pass unanimously. So let's move on to our next item under Public Works, which is a statewide trash amendments, Camarillo compliance.
Yes. Thank you,
It's a
Madam
funny
Mayor.
title.
Our stormwater program manager, Anita Coleman, will present this item.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and council members. This item is to consider authorizing staff to submit a letter to the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board recommending compliance with Track 1 of the statewide trash amendments. Basically, the statewide trash amendments became effective in April of 2015. The State Water Resources Control Board adopted the amendments to the water quality control plans for both ocean and inland surface waters, basically to address impairments that trash was causing to the water bodies. The regional board is requesting the city's method of compliance by November 20th of 2017. Basically, there are two methods of compliance. There's two tracks. Track 1 is to install full capture trash devices in high priority land use areas, and compliance is basically gained or obtained when all those devices have been installed. And this map kind of gives you a picture of what that looks like. The high trash areas are shaded in, and basically they're commercial, industrial, high density residential, transportation, and urban mixed. And the little dots you see are the catch basins that would require the full capture trash device. And then track 2 is another option, which is basically installing as many of the devices that you can in the high trash areas, but also allowing you to kind of a joint compliance by doing multi-benefit projects like street sweeping, catch basin maintenance, additional public outreach, which shows you're reaching the full capture trash device equivalency with that method. Track 2 does require ongoing monitoring and effectiveness surveys to guarantee compliance or to show that you're complying. And actually, guaranteeing compliance would be very hard under Track 2. So staff is recommending that we vote for Track 1, which is the installation of the full capture trash devices. And we have approximately 427 catch basins that would have to be retrofitted within the next 10 years. The approximate cost for the installation and compliance in Track 1 would be about $300,000 over the 10-year period. And then O&M additional cost would be about $100,000 a year for those additional full capture devices. Track 2 compliance cost is highly variable. We're still looking into that. This is a requirement that's going on throughout the state, and Track 2 is kind of being looked at as far as what are we looking at as far as costs, because you have to take into account the surveys, the effective assessments that have to be done under that. We believe it's initially about the same for the initiation, but the long-term costs for Track 2 may far exceed compliance under Track 1. So again, compliance with Track 2 is also, we're not guaranteed compliance under the trash amendments under Track 2. You'd be forever trying to prove that you're meeting your baseline assessments. So again, our recommendation is to submit a letter to the regional board stating that the city of Camarillo intends to comply with Track 1 of the statewide trash amendments. And I have a picture of what a full capture trash device, this is some that have already been installed in the city. Mm-hmm. They're basically screens that go around the collector pipe. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Mr. Kildee.
Yeah, thank you. As far as the cost of this, which fund is that going to come out of? And it will be over a 10-year period. Will we be able to suffice those requirements?
Well, basically, the funding, actually, in a couple council meetings, we're going to be coming back. About 150 of those 427 are in the Camarillo corridor area, and we are planning on using those funds for those devices. But from that step forward, it's basically general fund until we do have a method of obtaining funding for stormwater quality. I know that there's been some legislation that's recently passed, but I don't think there's a city that's tried to pass a fee for stormwater yet under that.
But potentially in the future, there may be some funds that we can use to...
We're hopeful there may be some grants or funding that might come become available in the future.
Question.
Are they cleaned out now, just manually now? Is that how? it's cleaned out?
Currently, we have about 1,500 catch basins that are maintained by the city, and we do clean those at least once a year. There's several, we prioritize them, and the ones that are in the high trash areas are inspected and cleaned when there's 25% or more debris about 4 times a year.
And with this new one, will there still be a cost to maintain them?
Yes.
Okay.
The cost right now, we have 56 of these devices in, and I was surprised the cost to maintain the catch basin with the device is about $10 more than the cost just to clean out a normal catch basin currently.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
I was
Added to the cost of all.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I got another question here.
Mr. Morgan?
You know, we have our catch basins, but we also have an area that sometimes develop a lot of trash in the drain, and that's the flood control channels that go through the city. Sometimes you can walk along Arneal and look down and go, oh my God. But that's from not us so much as from people just throwing stuff over it. Is the flood control board, they're not called flood control anymore, they're called,
Watershed protection.
yeah, watershed protection. Aren't they required to come and clean that stuff up?
They are. Currently, I believe they do annual maintenance of all the ditches in the city. However, on some of the hardened channels, the Camarillo Hills drain, we do, through the city's contract with our ditch maintenance contractor, clean at least once a year too, the trash, where we have an agreement with the Watershed District to allow us to do that.
They do it before rain season?
Yes.
Good,
Yeah.
okay.
They try to.
Any other questions? Mr. Chimbley?
Yeah, I've got a few. Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, well, I guess, would it be fair for me to think of this as well, I'm going to say this politically. I mean, to me, this is I want to put this in context because this is a classic example of a very, very expensive state mandate where we really have no discretion as a municipality. We have to follow these requirements. But it's a classic example of an expensive state mandate without providing independent funding to the local taxpayers who have to bear the burden of this. Would that be no, I'm not going to ask you. I'm just going to make that as a statement. But in that context, this entire this trash TMDL and the statewide trash amendments, we were presented with a very large figure several months ago in the city's CIP. This one particular slice, trash amendment, is part of a much larger effort that the city has to comply with, right?
Correct. The larger effort would be to address the other impairments that the city has, and the biggest one that we're going to address is bacteria.
Right. So it would be under that larger MS4 umbrella.
Yes.
So this is just part of it. I think you indicated that I was curious as to what the estimated compliance cost would be for Track 2 as well, but did I hear you say that initially it's about the same
Preliminary figures.
as Track 1?
They're within $60,000 basically, but it's very preliminary because what's not known, what we haven't put down on paper yet, is the assessment you have to do and the plan you have to submit. In a year, we'll know better, and that's when we'll come back with the implementation plan after we analyze the Track 1. We'll have a better idea of what the cost would look like for Track 2, but it's the assessment work that you have to do and the compliance to show you're reducing your trash every year by a certain amount of volume of trash. And that's basically described to us as doing surveys of streets and literally counting trash on the street a certain amount of times throughout the year and characterizing it. So it's staff time would be a lot in that.
But if I'm understanding this, though, we have to make a decision now. We can't wait for an additional year to make that decision, right?
We've been told, and I've got this in the letter too that's going back to the regional board, they've made it public at public meetings that we elect to do Track 1, but we go out and we find inlets that can't accommodate a screen. We can switch to Track 2, but still keep the Track 1 inlets with the devices, and then that monitoring program will just be for those areas that you can't put a screen in the basin. So we'll have that opportunity. And like I said, February of 2019, we have to submit either the map of all the full capture or the implementation plan for Track 2.
I just think it's unfortunate that the regional board, which laid this out in great detail in its August letter to the city, to every municipality within the regional board area, and touted Track 1 and Track 2. In my impression is the city doesn't have the time to really be able to focus on whether or not to select Track 1 or Track 2, and what the regional board ought to do is push this date back by 1 year to give the cities the appropriate amount of time to investigate what's the most economic way to address this. I guess I don't expect you to comment on that. That's more of an editorial from me.
I will let you know that Region 4 is behind. This was all our letter was supposed to be received by June. All the other regions in California got their letters out. Region 4 may have been agreeing kind of with what you're saying, that they felt the trash TMDLs were working, but they were pressured by the state.
Yeah, it's kind of like the cart before the horse. But so if I'm looking at the staff report, if I'm looking at the costs going out for compliance under Track 1, and I look at that going out 10 years, you have initial cost estimate at about $300,000, just shy of that, and with an additional O&M cost of $102,000 per year. So we're talking about a minimum of $1 million of O&M over 10 years under Track 1, in addition to the capital costs, right?
Correct.
Do you have any idea what that's going to look like? I mean, the program just doesn't end in year 11. Do we have any idea what this is going to look like, not just 10 years from now, but 20 years from now? And I think it's a fair question to ask the regional board anyway, what this is going to look like, because this is a large amount of money.
We estimate that $100,000 extra, and that's on top of our existing maintenance program, which is about $145,000, $150,000 a year to clean out the catch basins now. It's an additional 100. We estimate that additional 100 could drop to about 80. We think right now these full capture devices, we have 36 in Revlon and 20 in the rest of the watershed. We inspect them and clean them 4 times a year because we are concerned that they could cause flooding. We could cut back on that, and we've had some in since 2008, and they haven't really caused any problems. So that's why the O&M could be reduced if we stop cleaning them out 4 times a year. Maybe we go to two times a year.
Okay. Well, we'd actually have to ask for permission to do, or for consent to do that?
No. If we go Track 1 and we all the devices, we're in compliance. If we show that all the drainage areas have a full capture device in them, in the regional board's eyes, we're in compliance. It's the O&M that we want to keep them clean so we don't have problems.
So it strikes me that, the trade-off it's a trade-off. You get certainty with Track 1, but the compliance costs are large. A couple other questions that are related. There's a long discussion on the Revlon Slough Beardsley Wash trash TMDL.
Correct.
And the staff report says there are 649 catch basins in the trash TMDL area. Are all of those within the city of Camarillo's incorporated limits?
Yes, they are. In this map, you can see this line right here. That's the Revlon Slough. From that line west is Revlon Slough. What this doesn't show you are all the non-priority catch basins, which the majority of that 649 are non-priority. They're in the residential areas. And under the statewide trash plan, they don't require a full capture trash device. Under the TMDL, again, you had 2 options to comply with the TMDL. You could put those devices in all 649, or you could do this 4 times a year inspection and clean out. That's the option we chose, is to do 4 times a year and clean out, because there's 400 catch basins that we have data showing they haven't had to be cleaned out in 5 years.
Right. Right. So why go through that exercise, that cost? Yeah. Actually segues to my final question. That is, on big page 5, there's a form of draft letter to Sam Unger, the executive director of the regional board, and it says on the top of page 2 that the city respectfully requests the regional board to consider amending the trash TMDL to focus on the statewide trash amendments priority land use areas rather than all land use areas within the Revlon Slough and Beardsley Wash subwatershed. And if this letter were to go through, the city would be asking for the regional board to consider it. I would think it would be a good idea if the city would include language in that letter to state the rationale behind that.
Okay, we
So
can
that
do that.
it's clear to the regional board why we are asking for this. And I think that makes some sense, particularly from an economic standpoint.
Okay, we can do that.
I mean, this may be one of those ones where I'm holding my nose and voting for track one, but I don't have to like it.
It's been
Thank
going
you.
on for years. It just keeps getting worse.
Thank you.
Mr. Morgan?
I have one of the same kind of questions that Tony had about the Revlon Slough. Are you sure that's all in the city? Because I think some of that's in the county area.
The 649 are city maintained. It's not even private catch basins. It's the ones that the city does maintain. They're within the city limits.
So if I might maybe clarify that, if you're asking, does the Revlon Slough drainage area include areas outside of the city, it's yes. But those 600 and some catch basins that are within that area, those are all within city limits.
Okay.
Anything else? Question, so we're approving sending the letter. We're not necessarily approving the letter because you just said you were going to change the letter.
Correct.
So-
We're authorizing staff to submit a letter.
So basically, what we would agree to is complying with Tract 1 and with the understanding that this isn't necessarily the letter that will be submitted then.
It'll be a letter similar, as I understand it, with the reason for requesting the,
Correct.
It'll be very similar, again, with a little bit of language added in there. And I will add also, and Anita has, as obvious, done a lot of work and time spent. We have already had extensive discussions with the regional board about this request, so this is nothing new to them. It does make sense, though, with this being the letter to address this issue, that we do also include that more little background information as to why we're asking for that.
And we can do it in a succinct way that lists everything.
Yes.
So there's not something we would leave out and that they could catch us on. Sometimes when you say something, it makes it worse because they hold you just that little bit you say, where if you leave it open, then you've got that room to discuss and talk. So.
Right, and again, I would say we're really falling back on the already. I'm not sure how many meetings there's been.
Right. The regional board was required, under the trash amendments, they were required to meet with the stakeholders that are a part of a trash TMDL, and Camarillo is one of those for Revlon. There were some in LA too. At that meeting, they were outlining how the TMDL could look under the statewide trash amendments. It's just their staff hasn't had time to reopen the TMDL and change it. So we're pretty hopeful that they're going to default to the trash amendments.
Could I ask one more question? Talking about getting a year to really see what's there and maybe come back with something. If after a year we see that maybe we should go with 2, can we change?
Yes, we have that
Okay.
opportunity to do that.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions? A motion?
move to authorize staff to submit a letter to the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board stating that the city of Camarillo intends to comply with Tract 1 of the statewide trash amendments.
I'll second the motion.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not, please vote. And that does pass unanimously. My understanding is that we need to get to our study session a little bit earlier than normal tonight because of the timetable the consultant has for us. So with that, I'm going to recommend that we stop Public Works item B, because I doubt if we can do that in 2 minutes. And we will recess then to our study session. There is also a closed session. Does the city attorney want to announce that?
Can do that, yes. It's one item, a conference with the real property negotiator. It's authorized by Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is the former courthouse building. It's located at 2220 Ventura Boulevard. The negotiators are listed in the agenda. The negotiating parties include VCTC and the city. Under negotiation are price and terms of payment.
Thank you. So with that, we are recessed to a study session on other post-employment benefits, review of the city's program, and then the second item is our DeSalter architecture. So with that, we are recessed. Council back to order, and let the record reflect that all council members are present. Mrs. Craven, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Certainly. Please rise, place your hand over your heart, and join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Do we have any amendments to this evening's agenda?
No amendments, Madam Mayor.
We have no presentations. We move on to public comment, and I do have some speaker sheets. And I noticed that quite a few of them have to do with the LA CCE. Get the right on it. And before we take those, I'd like to ask the city manager to give us just a little update on some information that he has learned regarding that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Earlier this week, I spoke with Matt Skolnick, a program manager with LACE, specifically about the issue related to the December deadline that people are concerned about. Well, on December 7th, the LACE Board will be reviewing their policy regarding late entrance into the program to make it easier for people to join. They are reviewing this December deadline. The deadline, as Matt explained to me, does not impose a cash deposit or fee upon the city to join the JPA. The deadline merely helps LACE establish the customer base by which power contracts are negotiated and settled. So conceivably, new entrants could be phased in at a point when new power contracts are negotiated, let's say, prior to the negotiation of the summer 2018 contracts. So there is really no reason to rush to a decision at this time. More information about joining LACE will be available after December 7th. When the board meets on the issue, and that will give us time to review their information, bring back to you information so that we can get everybody up to speed on LACE's program versus, the program that we spent several months reviewing for the proposed CE that included the Tri-Counties area.
Great, thank you for the update. So with that, we will move on to our speakers. I think all of these individuals have been here before, but just in case you haven't been, everyone is given 3 minutes for items not on the agenda. And there's a clock that you can see, a clock that I can see. It will count down. When it gets to 1 minute, you'll hear a little beep and it will turn yellow to let you know to wrap it up. And these, again, are items that are not on the agenda. And we ask that you state your name for the record. You do not have to give us your address. So we will start with Todd Schuman.
My name is Todd Schuman. I'm a resident of Camarillo, 2260 Camilar Drive, Camarillo. Thank you for the update, City Manager. I appreciate that. I still want to encourage the council to put it as an agenda item sooner rather than later. I want to have an option to do 100% renewable, and I want a program that's going to encourage that, encourage people to put solar cells on their roofs and max out on renewable. I mean, our planet is burning up, and while we need many things, we need taxes, we need a whole bunch of stuff, one thing we need is to max out on our renewable if we're going to have a chance of, not baking in the future. So this is one way of facilitating that. We'll get more of it, I think, if we do this than if we just rely on investor-owned utilities like Edison. So that's really all I have to say. Again, as a resident, please, I encourage you to put this on the agenda and start dealing with this stuff sooner than later. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Alan Weiner.
Hello, Alan Weiner. I'm the chapter co-chair of 350.org, global climate change organization fighting the climate crisis around the world. I don't need to tell you about the need to work on this, but let me talk about why it would be good for Camarillo to have a vote on LACE, as Mr. Norman pointed out, at the next meeting. Even though this can be joined at a later date, you should know that this has nothing to do with the Tri-County study that was done before. That was a study for a new CCE. It was judged not to be feasible. But the LA CCE has its feasibility study already done. It's built into the business plan. Your city clerk, I think, is that okay? Has one copy of that. I hope she'll give a copy of that to each of you in case you need it. It's rather lengthy, but there's a one-page front and back model enabling ordinance that you can put on the agenda for your next meeting. And to make this happen, all you need to do is fill in the blanks. I think that's pretty easy, and it doesn't require a whole lot of work or a whole lot of research, and that way you will be providing every resident, every business in Camarillo the choice of whether to stick with Edison or have whatever level of renewables they want in their electric supply. I sent an email to all of you. I assume you all got it. And the bottom line is, if Lancaster can do this, Camarillo can do this. So I look forward to coming here at your next meeting and participating in the discussion that you will have on the ordinance to join the LA County Community Choice Energy Program. And they tell me crossing county lines is okay to do.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we have Daniel Chavez.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Chair, council members. My name is Daniel Chavez Jr. I am a resident of the city of Oxnard. I come before you today just to discuss a few things. As a resident of the city of Oxnard, I have seen the challenges of what happens when we lack housing, lack jobs, have failing infrastructure. I used to think that this was only an Oxnard thing, that we face these challenges, but as I started to explore the rest of our county as well as the state, that is not true. Each city faces the challenges of lack of housing inventory, the lack of jobs, failing infrastructure. In Oxnard, I would assume that we are the city that has the worst streets in the county. Our potholes have potholes, pretty much. Close, right? So recently, the state passed SB 1, which was the gas tax increase, that went into effect November 1st. I oppose the SB 1 because ultimately it was going to impact negatively to our low-income residents. 12 cents at the pump for gas, 20 cents for diesel, and up to $175 in vehicle registration beginning January 1st. Last month in October, the city of Oxnard experienced its 14th homicide. You have to ask yourself, what caused this? Well, I believe, and many others believe, that AB 109 was the cause for the rise in crime. I also believe that bad policies from the state legislature is also a cause for our problems. For over 2 decades, one party has controlled the state legislature. So I ask many of the residents of Camarillo, as well as the rest of the state of California, how are we doing? One party with no opposition means it's trouble and negative impact for the rest of the residents of this state. We can do better. We should be doing better. As the 6th largest economy in the world, as the quote-unquote golden state, we should be doing way better by our residents. As a father of an almost 2-year-old daughter and a son on the way, I want the future for my children to be golden in the Golden State. And the only way to do that is to hold our elected officials accountable in the state legislature. Our cities have enough responsibilities, and the last thing they need is to be facing the early release of more criminals into our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Your Honor, can I just say that we feel the same way you do about what happened? That some bills that passed in the past, people didn't read them all the way. And they sounded really good for the community, getting early release and things of that nature. And unfortunately, the population voted for it, not knowing what it would really do to us. So it has impacted us heavily.
Mr. Morgan. Our next speaker is Christine Brown.
Hello, I'm Christine Brown, and I'm a resident here in Camarillo. And thank you, Mr. Norman, for your report about LACE. It cuts down a lot of what I wrote considerably, so I'll try to pick through the parts that might be relevant. Bear with me, sorry, I'm a little nervous. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my first time speaking. I actually normally go to class on Wednesday evenings. And so I asked my teacher to let me out a little bit early so I could do this. So I'm here to ask the City Council to please add Camarillo involvement to your upcoming agendas. I guess it sounds like it doesn't have to necessarily be the next one, but I'm hoping it'll continue to be a conversation amongst you all. From everything I've read, LACE makes sense. It makes sense economically and environmentally. Right now, we're forced to use Southern California Edison, an investor-owned utility that is really responsible to their shareholders. They don't have any pressure to change the nature of their business or reduce costs because where else are we going to go? When you have LACE, on the other hand, a nonprofit governmental entity, they do not have shareholders. They have people in their scope, which would be businesses, residents, voters. So there's that. Let's see here. With LACE, Camarillo, along with various cities throughout Los Angeles and Ventura counties, would shop for the best energy supplier in terms of cost and the supplier's renewable energy portfolio. Elected officials from each city that belong to LACE get a say in this matter. SCE, is still responsible for the grid and the billing, not trying to blow up SCE here. With LACE, it gives us a choice. LACE will likely have SCE remain as an energy supplier for us in addition to offering us a new supplier. So if consumers like SCE, they can stick with them. For consumers, it's the opportunity to save money. It's the opportunity to choose a level of renewable energy they wish to have. And I guess, okay, I'm at 1 minute. And then from the LACE frequently asked questions sheet, almost every city that has community choice aggregation, CCA, has reduced its residents' utility bills. Some CCAs in California, of which there are over 70 cities in California that are part of a CCA, offer rates approximately equal to those offered by their existing utility. However, in these cases, the CCA's power is significantly greener than that of the existing utility. And I guess I'll just stop there. So thank you so much for your time.
Let me ask one question. I see one of those frequently sent questions.
Yeah.
And it says, won't LA County just make all the decisions for the cities that join? If you've ever been to SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments, you got to go to one of those meetings. We're part of it, but we're this part of it. In LA City, other cities, when the supervisor walks in, like bow almost, and it will be controlled by LA County. Just so you know.
It's that to me. Am I allowed to respond? Because I know it's public.
And actually,
okay.
we're not supposed to get into the discussion on this. So thank you, Mr. Morgan, and thank you for coming. And I'm sure we'll discuss all of that when we get a report from staff.
Okay. All
And
right.
that's the time we can talk about all that.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Our next speaker is Patricia Trudy. Am I saying your last name right? I think that's it. Is there a Patricia? Oh, come on up. Oh, you meant to give us a yellow one. Okay, but that was also on the same subject. Okay, great. So with that, I will announce that I'll turn this one yellow, and we have 4 nonverbal sheets in support of looking at that item. Thank you. Next, we have Barbara Williams.
She's back.
Barbara Williams, Camarillo Springs. And yes, Mike, I am trouble.
Oh, I
So the
didn't say
next
trouble.
time you make a comment about somebody, you better make sure there's not a hot mic to pick up what you said. Okay, at this session, I would again like to thank the City of Camarillo for improvements and maintenance of the work done on Caneo Mountain. Now I would like to point out that the Cavalia site area that faces the freeway is very unsightly. I call it a big junk pile, but one of my friends calls it trashy. She said, "Welcome to trashy Camarillo," since it is very near the Camarillo welcoming sign. This upset me, and it should upset you. This reflects poorly on the city and should either be cleaned up, removed to a location that is not visible, or some kind of barrier installed so people on northbound US 101 cannot see it. Really, this reflects on the city, not Cavalia. Please get this resolved, as the Christmas shopping season at the outlet mall and Cavalia itself will be bringing many outsiders along this stretch of US 101. Next, I want to request that the city repave Camarillo Springs Road. There are many cracks and some holes. I've seen streets repaved in the main part of the city that were not as bad as Camarillo Springs Road. According to Caltrans, their responsibility stops at the end of the on-off ramps. So again, please remember those of us who live in Camarillo Springs that are still part of the city limits. Finally, I would like for the city to request that Caltrans finish the storage site at US 101 southbound on-off ramp for the Camarillo Springs Road. They need to add more rock or landscape to keep the weeds and grasses from growing there. They only did a partial job when they put in that tank that's there. On the northbound on-off ramp, they mowed down the dead weeds and grasses and left the dead debris, making it a fire hazard. Across from this area is a flat, accessible area that people dump wood and trees cut down in other areas for the public to take. This area needs to be made a parking area with no dumping signs or be landscaped. I request they landscape these areas similar to the other exits in Camarillo, all of which reflect positively on the city of Camarillo. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope my issues will be resolved promptly.
Thank you, Barbara. And we send most of those on to Public Works, I believe, so that's their job. I'm sure they'll look at all of those. Our next speaker is Catherine Welch. Oh, there she is.
Hello, Council. My name is Catherine Welch. This is my first time doing this, so I'm not really quite sure what to do, other than I know I have 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
This is in regards to the Christmas tree lights that are put up every year at Eldridge Locker Park, which is my neighborhood. And I have pictures. Do you guys want to pass them around?
You can hand them to the city clerk.
This is a accident waiting to happen. What I'm trying to do is avoid a potential tragedy of someone injured or killed and then potential lawsuit for the city. Those extension cords are all exposed to the elements. Last year we had a big wind come up shortly after they put them up. About 3/4 of the lights were out because the wind pulled the lights apart from the extension cords. I plugged them all back in, got it going again. After that, we had rain, and the boxes were shorting out, and also the cords. Here's something else you can pass out. Very simple fix. They're, as you see here, those are protect the extension cord connections so that they can't be pulled apart, and they're waterproof. And then the boxes that the lights are plugged into, those need to have a waterproof box and a lock on them so that kids can't come over and just stick their finger in. Anybody at that park can do that. And so that's my story. That's it.
And tell us again which park?
Eldridge Locker Park in the Rancho Lomita housing tract.
Right. And that would, I believe they're Pleasant Valley Recreation and Parks districts.
Yes.
So that is a separate district than the city. So that isn't our park. But since you came to us tonight, I'll ask that our staff have a conversation with Pleasant Valley Recreation and Parks District, because it's their responsibility versus ours.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Okay, great.
One
Thank
question.
you.
One question. Because someone talked to me the other day about raising $2,000 for new lights. I mean, to help light it up better. Are you part of that group? No.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so put that on staff's list. Thank you for coming. Okay, those are all of the speaker sheets I have under public comment. Would anyone else like to address the council this evening? Okay, seeing no one come forward, we will move on to the rest of our calendar. And the next item would be a public hearing. It is a resolution approving the 2018 Development Allocation Cycle Award of Development Allotments. Mr. Vaca?
Yes, thank you, Mayor McDonald. So Measure A is the city's residential control system that was adopted originally in 1981, and it's been extended several times, most recently in 2015, and the current ordinance is set to run through December 31st of 2025. It's our city's local growth management program, and each year we receive applications that we review where approved projects may compete for allotments. And they're considered first by our Residential Development Evaluation Board, who reviews and assigns point ratings to applications. The acronym for the Residential Development Evaluation Board is RDEB. Ultimately, the City Council does award the annual allotments up to a maximum of 400 annually. Our existing schedule is on track. The 2017 work will ultimately result in allotments for 2018. We did receive 5 project applications for review, however, 2 were withdrawn. The RDEB conducted a preliminary review of point assignments on October 3rd, 2017, and then they held a public hearing to consider any requested modifications to the point assignments on October 17th, 2017. Now, this evening, the City Council will consider the recommendation of RDEB and award allotments and hold a public hearing this evening. So out of the 3 applications that we've received, the number of allotments requested is totaling 319 allotments, and that's for 2 residential plan development permits and a mixed-use commercial development that's a CUP. This is a map that demonstrates the locations of the requests. The HEG Investment Company application is located over in the Village at the Park area. And then at the southeast corner of Lewis Road and Pleasant Valley Road are the other 2 applications for the Camarillo Village Homes projects. And then we had the 2 withdrawn, one from HEG Investment Company and then the other from Rancho Associates Rancho. So first, Development Allotment 2018-1 on the application of Camarillo Village Homes is associated with Residential Plan Development Permit 196. That's an approved project that was approved on September 20th of 2016 for 285 townhomes. And none of the townhome units have allotments. This is a first-year application. And the 285 units does include 29 affordable moderate income units. And since they're moderate level affordability, those also need allotments. And this development project is part of the Drive Area Concepts and Design Guidelines. The next development allotment, 2018-2 application, is also a Camarillo Village Homes application in association with the Conditional Use Permit 369 for an approved mixed-use project that was approved on September 20th, 2016 for 24 mixed-use apartments, 3 of which are exempt because they're affordable at the low income level. Therefore, the request is for allotments for 21 units, none of which currently have allotments, and this is a first-year application. And this is also part of the Dawson Drive Area Concepts and Design Guidelines area. This image is a site plan that reflects both Camarillo Village Homes projects. The RPD and Townhomes project comprises the bulk of the site. And then at the corner of Lewis Road and Pleasant Valley Road is the mixed-use neighborhood. This is an architectural rendering of the townhome product for Camarillo Village Homes. And this is the architectural rendering for the mixed-use project. Next, Development Allotment 2018-3 is on the application of HEG Investment Company, which is also an approved project that recently had an updated modification reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission on September 19th of this year, where it adjusted the apartment unit mix and included 13 additional apartment units for a total of 96 apartment units. There are 83 allotments already in place for this development, and they do need 13, and this is located in the Village at the Park specific plan. This is the site plan illustration that demonstrates the HEG Investment Company layout of the project. The hotel is just to the north, and these are the architectural elevations of the apartments. And Part A of the point assignments addresses the availability of public facilities and services, and in order for a project to qualify for allocations, they must achieve a minimum of 49 points. And you can see that all three applications have exceeded the minimum threshold in Category A. And next, for Part B, which addresses the quality of design and contribution of public welfare and amenity, requires a minimum point rating of 70 points. And again, you could see that all three applications have exceeded the minimum threshold for allotments in Category B. While the RDEB reviewed the tentative point assignments and staff's recommended point assignments, there were no requests for any modifications from the applicants or the public, and so the point ratings that are presented to the City Council as recommended by RDEB have not included any modification requests. And then this is a table that demonstrates the rankings of all three applications. All three applications did achieve excess of the minimum point value required for competing in the allotment process, and however, there are less than 400 allotments requested this year at the total of 319, so technically there is no competition. However, we did rank them in order of percentage of points achieved, with HEG Investment Company coming out on top. So staff's recommended action is that the City Council conduct the public hearing tonight on the 2018 development allotments and consider the recommendation from RDEB and staff and adopt a resolution awarding the 2018 development allotments. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of staff?
Yeah, just one. Maybe I'm losing it. When we first put this in, they said that there'd be a maximum of 200 given to any one developer at any one time. But I don't know if it said unless there are no others. If that's what it said, because I can't remember.
Yeah, that's if there's competition in excess of the 400 annual allotments.
Then they could only get only one.
Then only one developer could have up to 240.
Yep, okay. But there's no competition, so.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. And our first speaker sheet is for Dennis Hargrave.
Good evening, Mayor McDonald, members of the City Council. I'm Dennis Hardgrave, representing the HEG Investment Company. Just really here to answer any questions you may have and to let you know that this project is already in civil engineering final design. Most of the backbone's already in place for this because it was installed so that there would be sewer and water coming down from the hotel and storm drain. So the details of the civil engineering are being completed, and we look forward to this starting construction next year and to finish off that site of Village. So,
Got one question.
Any questions?
Okay.
I just want to make sure. This is the place with the garages with the lights on all night, right?
This is the carports, yes. And they will actually be occupied by cars now. So, yes.
Mr. Gildy.
Yeah, Dennis, there's 13, I believe, 13 apartments. So what's the size going to be of them?
Well, these actually are an additional 13 units in addition to the ones that the 83, which were originally approved. Mm-hmm. And part of the rationale behind that was as we looked at the trend of both the very large project Fairfield's doing over the wall from this project and other apartments being built in town, we noticed that there were few, if any, studio apartments being put in any projects. So we removed the 3-bedroom units that were in this project, reconfigured within the skin, basically, of the buildings, and added some studio units as well. And so those are, studio units are roughly about 600 square feet. And then from there on, you have 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms. So that's what makes up the balance.
No more 3 bedrooms.
No more 3-bedroom ones in this unit project. We're really trying to control the body count, for lack of a better language, that potentially with 3-bedrooms this close to the university that we might have. So we feel like we have a better handle to meet an unmet need right now for people who want to stay in the city or work in the city and want to live here, but in these new family reformations or formations or people launching out, studios sometimes a good option. And so we also increase the number of 1-bedrooms as well. So I hope that answers your question.
What would the size of like a 2-bedroom roughly be?
I would just say generally based on what we're seeing, they're about 1,000 square feet generally.
And a 1-bedroom be around 700-800 maybe?
Yeah, they get a little bigger in 700 to 800 is probably good. You can do a 2-bedroom that winds up being 1,200 feet. It's not terribly efficient, and in this market, we're looking for this to create a niche a little different than the others, but very high amenity in this, in that there's a rec building and pool being built that wasn't in, if you remember, the project to the south, RPD 174-2 has all those 2 stories that kind of look like townhomes, but they really, for their open space, they've got a great big central lawn and barbecues and picnic area kind of things, but no pool. So this adds a pool to this new unit. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else? Great, thank you. Our next speaker sheet is Brandon Mann.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Brandon Mann, representing Camarillo Village Homes. And just similar to Dennis, we accept the points going forward, and I'm available for questions if you guys have any.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Mann? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Is it, I had just
Come
one
on back.
question, Brandon, if you would. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Your apartments, again, roughly the size of those?
I'm not sure. I believe they're studio flats right now, and they would probably be somewhere between, similar to Dennis, say, 700 to 800 square feet, I believe. But I can double check. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Great, thank you. Okay, that is the end of the speaker sheets. Would anyone else in the audience like to address the council on this issue? Okay, seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing. And council, any other questions of staff? Any comments? A motion?
Move the approval of staff's recommendation.
Second. Excuse me, second.
We have a motion and a second. And if there's no further discussion, please vote. And that does pass 4 yes with Mrs. McDonald voting no. That moves that. Thank you all for coming. So now we need to go back where we left off before the evening session, or the 7:30 session, I should say. So I think we were back on Public Works. And this would be item B, which is a water availability letter for the property previously identified as tentative track 5812.
Mayor, members of the council, I'm going to take this item since it's
coming close to closing out a program that I first was involved in heavily starting a couple years ago, and that's our water credit program, actually our water demand credit program. And that came to be, again, as I mentioned, a couple years ago. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity, even though we're talking about a specific project in a water availability letter. It really is timely to also talk about the program that relates to that particular project, and that is the demand credit program. The program was started because we ended up in kind of a predicament where we had a number of significant projects that were entitled and ready to move forward, but then the drought caused the state to issue some water conservation mandates that made it very difficult for us to be able to give water availability and water serve letters to allow these projects to move forward. So we had to come up with a program to figure out a solution to that dilemma. And that program was intended to be temporary. It's due to end at the end of this year. We put some items in place to help signal the development community on what expectations needed to be met so that they, if they wanted to pay or make a contribution to the water credit program, they would have to perform by the end of this year and make those payments. And again, those were only certain projects that were eligible. They had already been entitled. In fact, when we initiated this program, there were 4 key stakeholders that really sat down with staff and helped us craft the program. And those were Fairfield, which they've already paid into the program, and we've basically, that was about $600,000. We spent that money on the toilet rebate program, the low-flow toilet program, and that has been very effective. We also, the Springville area, the specific plan area east of the Springville interchange, they've pretty well, all of the developers in that area have paid the contribution. They were another major stakeholder. The other 2 were Amara, who has a commercial property on the south side of the freeway at the Springville interchange. They know the deadline is next month. They may come in and choose to make a contribution as well to keep their water credit active. And then the last of the 4 main stakeholders is Bob Selleck, and that's the item before you. The project site has been referred to and was entitled at the time as Tentative Tract 5812. We refer to it sometimes as the Selleck Industrial Property. It's the southwest quadrant of the Springville interchange. The item before you is a water availability letter. Normally what has been happening with the other developers, that when they make their water credit contribution, they also are preparing plans and ready to move forward to construction. In the case of the Selleck property, the tentative map expired, and because of other
excuse me,
challenges with moving forward, there isn't a project ready to move forward at this time. However, they are willing to pay the water contribution based on their water demand study. So when these developments came through the environmental process, they had to prepare a water demand study, and that based on the type of development that was being proposed, estimated how much water they would use. For the Selleck property, the estimate was 120 acre-feet per year. Now that was at a time before the water mandate, when water consumption for landscaping was estimated to be higher than what it would be estimated today because of some of the permanent water conservation measures that the state has enacted over the last few years. Landscape water use will be lower than what was estimated during the environmental process for the Selleck property. So as a result, they're not proposing to pay a water contribution for 120 acre-feet, but only 110 acre-feet, knowing that the type of landscaping with what will ever develop in the future will be something more less water intensive than what was maybe originally estimated in the environmental document. We have made it, there's a draft water availability letter in your packet. We've made it clear that if they do pay the contribution, This is something that will not be refundable because our plan is, even though the ability to contribute to the program ends next month at the end of December, the program will continue on through next year through continued implementation. So we have funding of, that's been collected. We haven't spent all of it yet. We have some implementation strategies that we'll still need to back and have contracts and move forward with that, which will take some time. But that money will be spent over the next year as we implement the strategies. So there won't be any money to give back if somebody changes their mind. So in the future, if a development were to come in and find a very low use landscape theme and come up with a water demand less than 110 acre feet, we will not reimburse the difference, and they're aware of that, and that's reflected in the water availability letter. On the other hand, if something were to change and the water demand turned out to be higher than the 110 acre feet, they would be required to make up the difference through our other program, which is permanent, and that is our water demand offset program, where they would have to go out and implement their own strategies to make up the difference in their water demand if it happened to be over the 110 acre feet. The idea is that the funds that they would spend would produce a permanent water savings with strategies that we put in place, like a low flow toilet, are intended to be permanent water saving features. So even though a development may not be ready to go forward immediately, we will immediately, as soon as we can implement the strategies, get the benefit of a water savings. And then ultimately down the road, when a development does occur and occupy and there's water use, we will already have those water saving strategies in place. So with that, we are recommending that we approve the water availability letter. That is really allocating the credit, but they don't actually get to use it until they meet the next step, which ultimately is with a development project having approved construction plans, and then at that point they would get a water will serve letter, which means that they can now connect up and have a water meter. So there still would be a subsequent step, but this would at least set aside a water credit for them that they would be able to carry with the land. Even if a development concept were to change, it would stay with the land, and they could apply that to whatever develops in the future. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Mr. Kildee.
Yeah, Tom, this amount of money, I know before we've drawn that down, do we have some ideas how we're going to draw down this one yet, or will that be determined at a later date through a study?
Yes. So both. It's actually, we find that we're going to need a menu of strategies to ultimately implement all of the, use all of the funding that has been collected or will be collected. The low flow toilet program is wrapping up. We've really pretty well saturated the interest in the community. There isn't much interest left there. So we are now moving to looking at some of our high water use landscape areas and approaching those property owners, and we're finding some interest to change out to lower less water intensive landscape, better, more effective water controllers and things like that. And then if we find that we end up having additional funds even after we've used up that interest group, then we might have to look at other strategies. But we do have a consultant on that. This is the business they're in, is that identifying water saving strategies, and they will continue to bring different strategies to us until we're out of money. And so,
and the low flow toilets, Tom, that we had for one of our strategies, that they've pretty well been extrapolated. They've pretty much been, all of them have pretty much been used for. Pretty much, yeah. The interest there is pretty well tapered off. Certainly the ones that we had purchased and planned to implement, we've used all of those up for the most part. And we found that the water savings we had anticipated is about right on target. So we have been measuring water reductions and monitoring to determine that our program has met the goals that we intended, and we're on target. So that's also a good sign that the strategies are working. We've used all the toilets that we had. Pretty much have been. Yeah, there's just a few left that we're working on. That's been a very successful program, in your opinion, then? Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Mrs. Craven.
I don't know if this is germane or not, but I'm curious. Is this one of the properties that had a well that was dedicated to the city, but we haven't gotten an allocation transferred to us from the GMA?
Actually, we had the allocation transferred as well.
This one was transferred, but we do have some that weren't.
Yeah, some weren't, but this one
was.
this one happened to be tied when the application for the Amara site went through, because Selleck owned both properties. They got processed together.
Thank you.
Anything down there? Okay. Questions, comments, motion?
Your Honor, I will make a motion to approve the water availability letter for the property previously identified as tentative tract 5812.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that does pass unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Fox. I'm anxious to see what comes up with next. It's everybody who wants one has a new toilet. Okay, the next item is under our city attorney. It's an amendment to the city manager employment agreement and resolution amending compensation and classification schedule. Mr. Perrick.
Yes. As you've noted, Mayor, this is an item to consider an amendment to the employment agreement with City Manager David Norman. The proposed amendment would provide for a 5% salary increase from $234,000 to $245,700. And also, as a necessary step, there would be a resolution amending the compensation and classification schedule to adjust the salary band for the position of the city manager. Mr. Norman was hired as the city's city manager effective April 5th of 2016. An employment agreement was executed confirming that appointment. And the salary at that time was $234,000. It has been 18 months between April of 2016 and October of 2017. The agreement does provide for Mr. Norman to be considered for a salary increase as of October 1, 2017. The 5% increase would be over an 18-month period, being from April of 2016 to October 2017. So on an annualized basis, that would be at a 3.33%. In addition, there is another amendment that is proposed. That would be one that would increase the contribution by Mr. Norman to the retirement health savings plan from 12% to 15% of annual base salary. I should point out that this increase will be at Mr. Norman's sole expense and will not result in any increased expense to the city. So the suggested action is a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the Second Amendment to the employment agreement with City Manager David J. Norman, increasing the salary of Mr. Norman from $234,000 to $245,700, and to adopt a resolution amending the compensation and classification schedule. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Perrick? Mr. Kildee.
Yeah, Counselor, this would be effective October 1st of 2017, is that right?
That is correct.
And then it goes for 18 months after that?
No, it will go until Mr. Norman is considered next October for a possible increase, but it will stay in effect until council changes the compensation.
I get it, okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else? Any discussion or a motion?
I'll move to authorize the mayor to sign a Second Amendment to the employment agreement with City Manager David Norman, increasing the salary of Mr. Norman from $234,000 to $245,700, and to adopt a resolution amending the compensation and classification schedule.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please vote. And that passes 4 yes, with Mayor McDonald voting no. All right. We now move on to informational items, and we start with the city manager.
No comments, Madam Mayor.
Anything from down there at the table? Who hasn't talked tonight? Everybody. Oh, John hasn't. Nothing? City Attorney.
I have no items.
Great, thank you. City Council, let's start with Mr. Trimley this evening.
Oh, gosh. Okay, thank you.
Did I do you first last time? Oh, well, okay. If you weren't expecting to be first, I'll start down here.
I'm good.
Oh, you're good.
If
Okay.
no,
You
it's
got it.
I actually made some notes, so I didn't
Okay.
feel completely blindsided. Let me just report on meetings that I've attended since November 1st to start that off. On November 2, I attended the Camarillo Economic Forecast. On November 6th, the Pleasant Valley Recreation Park District Needs Assessment, the Liaison Committee meeting, and I'll come back to that in a second. On November 8th, the Streets and Transportation Committee meeting with Mr. Kildee. On November 9th, the Airport Authority meeting together with Mr. Morgan. On November 13th, the Investment Committee meeting again with Mr. Kildee. You're seeing a pattern here, aren't you? And November 14th, yesterday morning, I attended the first summit of the economic development process. I only attended the beginning just to see how it would unfold. I didn't stay around to participate in the discussion groups because I thought I might chill free speech in that sense. But in all sincerity, I wanted to, kidding aside, I really want to thank the people who were participating in that. There are approximately 50 attendees, I think, if my numbers are right. A really good cross-section of people within Camarillo, and I'm grateful to all of them, and I'm hoping that they will make the other two meetings as well, because doing all three meetings is what the process is all about. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of that. Wanted to come back for a second on Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District. Just to, as you know, I did vote tonight on a matter involving street closure relative to the Christmas parade. I want you to know that I have received advice from the FPPC that since Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District is no longer a client of my former law firm, I do not have a conflict of interest that precludes me from making or participating in meetings or decisions of our City Council which may affect Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District, since those decisions would not have an effect on my prior firm. So accordingly, I can participate going forward in future council matters regarding the Recreation and Park District, for example, the item on tonight's consent calendar, and I'm happy to be able to do so. A couple of things that I would like to just bring up briefly. I would like to ask staff to bring a report back, and this may be already coming back to us in January. This is principally for Public Works, on the issue where we are on auxiliary lanes, on the preliminary planning on auxiliary lanes, and also on the idea that's been previously discussed for the meter lights, when you go on the on-ramp. I don't know what to call them, Mr. Klotzel. I'm going to failure at the nomenclature, but thank you, the ramp meters. And I know that those have been discussed. I would like to hear a little bit of a status report. I've had a number of citizens specifically ask me about that. And then finally, probably one of my favorite topics, the traffic signal at Pettit, coming out of Village to the Park. I am really hoping that one day that traffic signal will actually come to fruition.
Is that a day when we're all still alive?
I don't know, but I sure would like it to become operational. So could we please have a status report on that? And it's only because I happen to be in that intersection every single workday.
Sure. Yeah, while we are only granted the day that we have current to live, we are hopeful that the signal will be activated in the near future. We do have news, backtracking a little bit, there was a revision of the plan. That revision has been approved by Caltrans. The permit has been extended. The contractor has worked out the final contract provisions to go ahead and finish the installation. The pole, it requires a new pole. The pole has been ordered. We hear its expected delivery is December 18th, and the contractor would plan to install that after the holidays rather than go in there right through the middle of the holidays. So soon after the first of the year, the contractor will be out there to finish things up.
This is a Caltrans contractor?
No,
it's our contractor.
No, the requirement of the signal was based on the D.R. Horton development within Village at the Park. The requirement ended up coming from the need for the signal from the development, and the timing was such that D.R. Horton was the one to move forward with securing the design and also the contractor to install the signal, which will be a Caltrans on the ramps. It would be a Caltrans signal. So it's under a Caltrans permit for construction, constructed by the private developer's contractor.
All right. Well, Madam Mayor, I don't know whether to begin holding my breath or not.
No.
But
Chicken hold it a long time.
I'm certainly hopeful that we're going to see something come to fruition quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. My daughter lives out there, and she asks me all the time, when are they going to do this? It's not ours. It's Caltrans. Now I can tell her it's coming along. It's coming to fruition, I hope. It's not like the one over here on, which one, Dunnigan? Which we kept asking and ordered the polls for how many months? Anyway, hopefully this will be done now, and I won't get asked again when. I went to two different AWA meetings, the regular board meeting that's over in Ventura, and we discussed a lot of the things we're going to be doing this coming year and schedules and so on. Also, we went another day, we went on a tour of the water supply area, 4 different places in the county on a water tour. We went to the Bard Reservoir, and if you haven't been up there and seen the Bard, it's kind of interesting. 6 months worth of water there. They always keep it at that. And then we went to... Camarosa's plant out here, it's a desal plant, and got to look at that, went through the same kind of thing we did when they first opened. Then we went to, from there to the Freeman diversion plant, which I knew where it was, but never went there. Very interesting. It's a huge quarter of rock, of cement, out into the middle of the river. And they've got water they trap over here, and it diverts these into these settling ponds all down the line. Well, most of them are empty. There's a couple of them have water in them, but they also they had to do fish ladders by environmental sources. Had to do fish ladders. Well, they planted over 1 million steelhead trout at one time in Fillmore, so they can get them to come down, go to the ocean, and come back. Well, in the past 2 years, they've seen one come back, and that's not from that group. It's from a group of rainbow trout, which are grown up there now, that some of those turn into these steelhead. It's weird. And then they decide to go to the ocean. Well, I've seen one come back on the fish ladder in 2 years. And so for all the money being spent on that, it doesn't look like it's working very well to me. But they've got it organized. They've got a camera that watches the little thing. If something tipped, boom, it takes pictures of these fish. One fish. Anyway, then we went to the Casitas Lake. And again, it's sad because that's 75 feet down. You can see where it normally is up here on the side of the bank, all around it. We were on the dam. It's going to be a sad situation if they don't get rain this year. Okay, then I was there with a lot of students too that we invited to come along. Okay, I went to the Economic Outlook with Tony and others. That was interesting. I didn't necessarily have to agree with him, but it was interesting. Cameron Ranch House Foundation meeting. We had one of those, Charlotte and I did. Again, a lot of good business. You got some good people running that thing, and I'm glad they're there. Airport Authority, that was a quickie. Tony and I did a quickie on that one. There was only 2 elements, and one of them was a lease and so on, and we got out in pretty good time. Library donors, there was a library donors appreciation event. How many did you go to that? Anybody? Okay, it was at the library.
Our library? I didn't know anything about it.
Well, it was sent to us, and it was. I got it from them. Anyway, library donors appreciation event, and they had guys dressed up like pirates and all kinds of things. The sad thing is, though, they had the authors thing on the other room across the way. They're books and authors. You can come in and talk to them, and they sell you books. And anyway, that was going on at the same time. I walked into the library, and this was Veterans Day. Every person that went to Camera High School was listed, and those that they had pictures of them. And of the 9, I had 7 of them were my classmates, in one way or the other. And 2, one of them was a Bronze Star winner, Kenny Combs, and others. It was really sad for me, but it was. I'm glad they did it. Okay, Air Pollution Control Board. Went to that, and that was basically short business. We only had just barely had enough to make a quorum because everybody left. But we had Air Pollution Control Board meeting. We did our stuff, and nothing spectacular jumping out at us but business. So that's it.
Thank you. Mrs. Craven.
Oh, I've got a lot of things, so bear with me here. I attended an RDP 21 meeting, and my my goodness, it was unbelievable, the things that we've worked for so long that have all of a sudden happened. The people on listed as speakers, were the district commander of the Coast Guard in the San Francisco office. This is part of that district. And also the local commander from Los Angeles, which is a sub-area. And the helicopters are here now. There are 4 helicopters that are stationed at Point Mugu. With them came 5 pilots. This is permanent people. 3 aviation techs and 4 support people for 12 permanent people. Plus, there are 14 that will rotate down here for the next 2 years while they're completing the construction of the facility. And so they'll be rotating down mechanics and I don't know what all, but for on TDY for 2 years. And then those 14 will become permanent down here as their facilities completed. They have $16 million budgeted for the new facility. They're going to break ground on the new facility in 19, and it should be ready in 2020. In addition to that, we had been lobbying, the Regional Defense Partnership had been lobbying for, 7 or 8 years to get these helicopters here from Los Angeles because their lease at Los Angeles was, LAX was expiring because the airport's expanding. And so we finally got them, but they kept telling us that the fixed wing, they just weren't real sure about it. Well, this man from San Francisco acted as if this is a done deal. The fixed wing will be coming here when the facility is completed, and that will bring, if I took better notes, I could know where I wrote that. I always write. That'll bring some more people, and it's the fixed wing. The helicopters go out and search and rescue. They go out on to support the ships on the drug intervention. The airplanes go out, go farther. They respond for every place from San Francisco to San Diego, and a lot of search and rescue and that kind of thing, because they have a better range than the helicopters. And so we just sat there really amazed at what he was saying, because we'd been told in April that no decision would be made for a long time. Then we got a report from the Air Guard. This I found really interesting. The Air Guard was called up a little sooner than usual because so many aircraft were fighting the fires in Northern California and other places down in Anaheim. And so their MAFs, their firefighting capability units, were installed, and they were fighting fires. But they were very limited because the 2 hurricanes, and I thought I'd recognize those C-130Js out there in a picture on TV when they said, and the Air National Guard is standing up the St. Thomas airport, so that, and they went in, they cleared it, they put in everything that had to be done so that relief and emergency support groups could come in. And then as soon as they finished there, they were ready to come home, and the very next day they were sent to San Juan to do exactly the same thing with the San Juan airport. So they have been very busy, but they were instrumental in opening up those 2 airports for emergency relief flights, and at the same time they had some planes that were able to respond when needed for the firefighting capability. Also, it was announced, I talked to Amanda Fagan about the planes that we've been hearing. She said there has been absolutely no change to the flight path into Magoo, and so it must be people who are coming here, just transitional people, she called them, but people coming down for a day to do their touch and goes and going on. However, December 2nd and 3rd, it was announced by Captain Yonke. December 2nd and 3rd is the Ronald Reagan Defense Forum. There will be quite a few large aircraft here those 2 days plus the days prior and following. So I don't believe that was transmitted to us. I still complain. Anything we do that might possibly in any way affect them, they want us to give them lots of advance notice. As far as I know, this is the only advance notice we've gotten of the large airplanes that are going to come in over us. In addition to that, the Triton UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles, Unit W is here, or is coming very soon. That brings 170 people to the base, and that's a new tenant command. And so they're expected to arrive soon. And that was all from one meeting I attended. We went to see the Cavallia's Odiseo, and I do have to say, I know you might not like the tent, but it's a beautiful show. It's a wonderful show. I attended the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency's meeting on Monday. We discussed a possible pumping allocation plan for the Oxnard Plain, but it was just a receive and file item. The municipalities and the farmers have until the end of February to get together and bring forth a plan of their own, similar to the one for the Las Posas Basin, or it could be that there's some draconian measures implemented. It'll be a staff recommendation, which was what a year and a half ago we told this group, that we would develop a plan for them. Last evening, along with Mr. Tremblay, I attended on behalf of the City United Water Conservation District's 90th anniversary. And I think it was really something. And those people have had a lot of foresight in developing plans to conserve and preserve our water resources. And the other thing I have is I have noticed in the last couple weeks there have been 2 ribbon cuttings that are held at 5 o'clock on City Council meeting nights. And I'm wondering if we could talk to the chamber. It's really hard if they're going to start having more than half of the ribbon cuttings during our council meeting times. When we do go and represent the city, and I mean it always in the past has been on a Thursday afternoon, evening, when the chamber did, and the city council member or the mayor stands up and says that we work hand in hand with the chamber, and what's good is for business is good for the city, and what's good for the city is good for business, and we work together so well. If you're not there, you can't say it. So I'd like to have somebody talk to them about getting back onto a time that is not specifically at the exact time our meeting's supposed to start. Thank you.
There's one tomorrow night at 5 o'clock on Thursday. My understanding is those were 2 restaurants, and it was the request of the restaurants. The one a couple of weeks ago, and then this one tonight. But
well, maybe they could do something to encourage them to change them.
Because their standard schedule is still the Thursday, and as I say, there's one tomorrow night.
I didn't even know about this one until this morning. I got something that said, "Today, ribbon cutting."
Well, you signed, oh no, you don't sign those. No.
No.
Okay, Mr. Kildee.
Yes, I have a few things too. I did attend VRSD meeting, Streets and Transportation with Councilmember Tremblay, and Investment Committee with Councilmember Tremblay as well. And maybe Dave, you can pass along to Dave Moe. I did ask about the trees on Pickwick and overgrown, and I did get a response back that apparently they're out to see if they could get a contract to trim those back And it's supposed to happen, I think, pretty shortly here, but I appreciate you getting into it. And is anybody else kind of seen, maybe it's me and being 60 plus now, but there's a lot of speeding, it seems like, going on in the city. I don't know if anybody else has
I'm not supposed
feel
to, I can
that.
tell you.
Yeah. And I didn't, and I know it's private information, but I was just wondering if there's ever any log about how many speeding tickets that we give out in the city. I don't really know how many. I know with privacy, I'm not asking for any names, but just kind of what Councilmember Craven had talked about, that marijuana initiative. It'd be kind of interesting for me to know, because I assure everybody that, you know, they're patrolling. And, you know, when I say this, I'll probably be the next one that get a speeding ticket. But you know, I know that they're out there patrolling this, and I appreciate that. But, you know, with the holiday season coming on and we get into kind of a high volume time, maybe, you know, some patrols can be out there, maybe some, you know, public education of some sort that, hey, you know, it's a holiday,
Trailers.
so in our newsletter on our website, you know, drive carefully and, you know, respect other people that are on the roads too. Also, I was asked, and I know a lot of us have done this, but and this is a streets and transportation, perhaps we could look at it at some point, as a dual left turn lane from on Las Posas and Daily Drive, like if you're making a left turn on Daily Drive onto Las Posas, and that far right lane, you go in the lane that goes on the freeway. And I've had a number of people that they'll be in that lane and then they'll start cutting because they don't want to get on the freeway, and they start cutting across.
Yeah,
I don't know if
that's a bad
anybody
one.
else has had this too. But if there's a way, maybe, and I believe it's Caltrans that does the on-ramps and whatnot, but if there's a way, maybe, what do those call those little things you put in the street, those little, that make your tire, those little
dots.
Yeah. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but something that maybe we can just look at a better directional to see if you are in that right-hand lane, and if you're going to, you know, if you want to go over the overpass, that there's somewhat of an easier way to do that. Would that be something we might be able to at least consider?
We could look into that and see if anything could be done.
Okay. And also that we've got Black Friday coming up, and Ventura Boulevard, are the lights out now that's got the cautionary lights?
Yes, they were put up, I believe, last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's just a comment for me because I am in retail. The retail experience is really important now. One of the worst things that can happen if somebody cannot find a place to park. And I know it's an issue all around town, and especially on the Ventura Boulevard. I get that. But if there's any way that we can do some kind of signage or something on the public access that can help with potentially giving them an idea where they can park their car without circling around trying to find a parking place and get frustrated and then leave. And I don't know if you could work with the shopping center owners on that, the park and rides. I know we've done that in the past, that they've really encouraged their employees to park off-site and get, you know, dropped off to where they are. But I think anything we can do to make the shopping experience a pleasant one for shoppers is a good thing. So I don't know if anybody has any ideas on that, but if they do, I'm all ears. And, you know, perhaps it's an educational thing, a directional signs or extended parking here or something of that nature. Does that make any sense?
I guess, yeah, I'm trying to follow you as far as directional signs to the existing parking lots for the outlet center.
Yeah, and that's the major one. But others, if there's other places where they can park, because the parking places are going to be filled up. We all know that. But if there's another way that we could get reciprocal parking or something in this critical, you know, quarter here, perhaps would be a good thing. I don't know if anybody's been over there lately, but it's already starting to get really busy.
We'll
Other
take a look
places
at
do with
that.
Yeah.
It was
We'll take a
filled
look
up
at
in the
that.
middle of
Thank you.
October,
Weekends.
in the daytime.
Really? Oh, wow.
Tuesdays, any days.
We can brainstorm some possible things that we could do.
And then I know that I can't, well, I won't talk about that because I can't. Anyhows, let's see. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I have a list, and I have a couple of comments on the things. It's a nice thing about being latched, you get to add on to everything we've heard. The speeding around town, I think it's something that I know I complain about all the time on certain streets, and I blame it all on Public Works' fault, because if we had a town full of potholes, people wouldn't be able to speed, right?
But then you could complain about the potholes.
So it's the price we pay, I guess, for having such nice streets, but it really is a problem on certain streets. And I think our trailer is now working again, the speed trailer. I have my glasses on. But I think I think for a while it was out of service, and I think it's back in. And maybe that needs to be out and about and reminding people how quickly they are speeding. Because some of our streets are so nice, you are driving faster than you think when you look down, because you don't feel it.
It seems like it to
Yeah.
me.
That's the problem with Upland. I complain about that one all the time. Speaking of potholes, I have had several people ask me about the bike path through Old Town, and supposedly it has potholes in it. And
Okay.
needs some maintenance work on it, the one that goes
Yeah,
behind. and-
circuitous or on the streets in the alley.
Yeah, through the alley and so forth.
can
Can
check
somebody
that.
check on that
Of course.
one? And let's see, let's go through meetings. VCTC, I will tell you that every subject that comes up that can possibly have anything to do with the 101 freeway, they hear me talk about the 101 freeway. Sometimes I even stretch it to things that probably wouldn't count, but it is a constant reminder that we need to do some work. And I will tell you, in speaking with Caltrans, they are interested in helping us work through some of those issues, the metering, the auxiliary lanes. And supposedly there's a new name for auxiliary lanes. Can you find out what that is? Because Caltrans mentioned that. So if I go back next time and I know what the name is, maybe that will help. No, I don't know what it was. Another meeting, Pleasant Valley Recreation Parks Facility Needs Assessment Ad Hoc Committee. A reminder that the surveys are out. The people who would have gotten the notice in the mail have it. And then there's also an online survey that anyone can take.
Including us, right? We can take-
Including us. So go online. You can take it online. You can give them the thoughts, and it will go into the study.
Jan, online, is it on the website? Is that you?
I believe on their website, but I believe there's a link on ours.
Yeah, there's a link on our website. It's also on our Facebook page.
Yeah, so take advantage of it. It's the opportunity to have input. VCOG had a very interesting meeting. Economic development is the topic everywhere today. And we had the presentation on the county strategic plan that's been finished from the county, and then also a short briefing, unfortunately, because I could have listened to them all day, and it was the Cal Lutheran. It was the one you went, yeah, the one you went to, and so knowledgeable. And it was interesting. We talk about jobs, and some economists will say, well, oh, we have full employment, or we have all these jobs. The problem is we've lost the high-paying jobs in the 97,000 to 150,000. A tremendous number of those jobs have been lost, and what we've gained are the minimum wage jobs in the service industry, and so that just doesn't keep track of, match up to your community. So when you talk about economic development, you got to get those high-paying jobs back, or people can't afford to live here. Those were the people who could buy the homes in this community. So it's what comes first, high-paying jobs or housing, but they got to somewhat match up there, and right now we're not doing it. The economic development at the chamber lunch was interesting. You listen to enough of these, some of them match up, and some of them have their own, they go off in their own direction. So I guess we have to listen to them all and try to figure out what works for us. But it certainly is the topic, no matter where you go. Veterans Day. I have had several people ask us what we were doing for Veterans Day, and to my knowledge, we, the city, didn't do anything. And I think what we need is a a report from the ad hoc committee on what the future plans are for the recognition of the Vietnam vets, so that when someone asks us, we'll be able to say, well, this is what's upcoming and this is what you can expect. I think a lot of people thought that we would have been doing something on Veterans Day for that. And
Let me just say that until about 3 or 4 years ago, we did have a program on Veterans Day, but it wasn't a city program. It was out at the Veterans. No, it wasn't the American Legion. It was the Veterans of Foreign Wars who put this one on. The American Legion put on the Memorial Day program until the Conejo Valley changed hands, and then they started putting it on. But it was the VFW that actually collected the money for our Veterans Memorial, but many of those people have gotten to an age where they can no longer put the program on, and so the program stopped. I think it was about 4 years ago, maybe 3.
I think this was people that were watching all the other programs we were doing regarding the Vietnam recognition of the Vietnam War veterans, and because I guess they must have expected to have something on Veterans Day. So anyway, a report and to give us a calendar, and then I think that would help us answer those questions. Oh, let's see what else I have. We had gotten a couple of letters regarding the weeds in Cayugas Creek, and I think the last I heard was we were going to send that off to Watershed Protection Agency. Have you had any feedback from them on what they're going to do to kind of clean that up?
We did forward that requests and the need for that on to Watershed Protection District. I haven't received back any definite schedule for that. I know they do have an annual where they typically focus on the flow line of the channels. I think one of the locations of this was on the banks of the creek, which doesn't necessarily get cleaned out when they clean the flow line. But I haven't heard back definitively on a date on when they'll take care of that. But we can touch base with them again.
I do, and if you look down there and you see all that, I think it's really come to the forefront when people watch all these fires that are going on, that are racing in spots that people might not have ever thought about being a really fire hazard, but when you see all that dry brush and stuff down there, with the homes sitting on both sides of it.
Yeah, I kind of follow up on that a little bit. Last year, before the real rain hit, we were worried about where the water flows out of Camp Springs. Because if it jams up there, that's when it kind of gets huge. It happens every time it floods. It's what happens. They did a pretty good job, but if you got on the creek and went down the way by our sanitary plant, it is full of trees in that thing, and I'll lay you odds, if it's a huge rain, it's going to do like it did before, jump the bank right there again.
That's a flood.
And that needs to be cleaned out to help us. And I think they didn't do that last year. So we need to look at that.
We can check on the status of that also.
Okay.
And let's see. Oh, I forgot this when we were talking about economic development. I too was at the workshop on Tuesday, I think it was. And I just had the part of welcoming everyone, but it was a full house at the library. I didn't stay to watch the process either, but it was nice to see a lot of people participating. So hopefully good things come from that. We did have a business visit. That's always fun. This is the Pet Paint. Somebody help me. What's the name of their?
We just went to them a year or two ago, didn't we?
But now they've expanded, and their other business is building exhibits for and that one's really the one that's really grown and taken off. So in fact, they need a bigger site. They've grown that much. So it's and the neat thing about it is, I'm going to call them kids, but these kids grew up here, and now they've got their business here, and now they're men instead of kids, I guess. But but it's neat to see that kind of that homegrown success. Educator of the Month have started, so I did mine in November, and you get to pick those up next. And the other one that's always fun to go to is the Citizen Academy at the police department when they graduate, and they are always just so excited. They fall in love with Virginia, who heads that program. But they come away with such admiration and of what the Sheriff's Department does. So it's just always nice to watch that and the excitement. And it's neat to see so many people get involved. Compliments on the Dunnigan Light. No matter where I go, people are talking about that one. They love it.
Jan, you know what my wife says about that light now at nighttime? I don't have to worry about where the stop sign is. It's always rolling on our tongue.
But I've had people say, oh, I've been keeping track, and I've gone down there 8 times, and only one time I had to stop. I mean, they're actually really watching what it does, so it's you made a lot of people happy. And the other one that really is the talk of the town is the Cavalia show. It was absolutely amazing, and if you love horses, you're going to love it. If you're so on horses, you're going to love horses when you're done, because
If you love gymnastics.
and gymnastics.
Acrobats are amazing.
And well, I was going to that next, but yeah, and the human part of it is amazing too. I mean, it's the whole show, and they do such a nice job. So it's something that's it's kind of amazing to think that Camarillo has it. In I don't know if you noticed the schedule, but we're the last one on their 2017 tour, and there's all these big cities all the way along, and they just left Nashville to come, and there's Camarillo, California. Yeah, so
Yes, as the tour continues.
yeah, so it's pretty neat, and it's something that's short term, but it's certainly something, from what I hear, just the buzz around town. Everybody is talking about, you got your tickets yet, or have you been yet? So it's certainly a good thing. I asked their director of publicity, I guess is his title, if when they're done, if they'll give us a report on the ticket sales by zip code, because they keep track of that, so we'll know where people came from to see it, and it'll be interesting to see what it actually brought into our community. When they talk about what it does for a community, is it $6 to $7 million it infuses into your economy, not to us, the city, but you want to make a comment, Mr.
Yes, they anticipate 5 to 7 million of spin-off revenue throughout the community as a result of its presence in our town.
It's amazing. For instance, the snack bar serves pizza. Well, it's 2 of our pizza restaurants that provide it. I mean, just things like that just build and build. So it is a good thing. And so far, traffic, I don't think, has been a problem, right? It's been working?
No, it's been efficient. We haven't received any complaints, and there hasn't been any accidents or any incidences, so we're happy to report that it's been going smooth.
Good.
I had one person say, Mike, that's causing a lot of traffic. Look in the afternoon. I said, I'll tell you what, have you ever been out there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Well, no. I said, go take a look. When that Cavalier is not there, it's the same. I looked at both of them. It's the same thing.
Well, and they're not there at 5. They don't start till 8.
I know, but I'm saying that distracting you doesn't.
Oh, you mean as far as looking at the tents?
Yes,
Well, hopefully everyone's gotten used to the tent by now. And I think that is everything on my list. And unless someone has something else.
Mr. Morgan said I was there, but I neglected to say that I attended the Camarillo Ranch Foundation board meeting.
Yeah.
So noted. Okay, with that, we will adjourn, and we will adjourn to the December 6th, 2017 meeting at 7:30, and that is our reorganization meeting. So we are adjourned.